Om Ganantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Shakshur Meritam Yenam Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Gaurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadaraye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. So we are pursuing the study of Vedanta-sutra. We are seeing Buddhism. So because there were some questions, I just want to make some kind of a summary. What is Buddhism and who is Buddha? So there's a historical Buddha which is known to all the Buddhists who lived in the 6th century BC. He was called Siddhartha Gautama, and sometimes Shakyamuni, meaning the Muni, the sage of the clan Shakya. Now, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj, he's speaking in one of his books about Vishnu Buddha. And this Vishnu Buddha happened to live long time before the historical Buddha. And he was an incarnation, that is the incarnation of Vishnu. That when we say the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, that Buddha who happened to live millions of years ago is the original Buddha. So in order to understand a little bit what is this original Buddha, we have to know that in the two main branches of Buddhism, there's Hinayana, those Buddhists that we see in Sri Lanka, or Burmany, or in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Laos, Cambodia, dressed in yellow saffron. Those are called Hinayana. Theravada, they call themselves Theravada, the old school. They are called by derision Hinayana, small vehicle. So they only believe in the historical Buddha and they follow his precept. Now there's Mahayana. Mahayana means the great vehicle, and the example has been given of a big boat. The Hinayana is a small boat crossing the ocean, and when we cross, we get rid of that boat, and the Mahayana is a big boat. Everybody can come in. That's why it's called Mahayana. And so the theory of three Buddhas has been elaborated in that Mahayana. The first Buddha is called Nirmanakaya. This is the historical body, body of Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama. Then there's a second body called Sambhogakaya. Bhoga means to enjoy. Those who enjoy the bodies of Buddhas, there are a series of Buddhas, different Buddhas that appeared in time. And this is also written in those literature, Buddhist literature called Jataka. Jataka means previous birth of the Buddha. Buddha remembered all his past lives, so he narrates his past lives. And sometimes there are also description of other Buddhas. And sometimes there are description of Buddhas like in Srimad Bhagavatam. Jiva Goswami is saying this is not the historical Buddha, this is a different time where the Asura could actually travel into space, to different other planets. So this is where we find the different stories of different Buddhas. So there's an original Buddha. Actually in the Dharmakaya, the last body is the body of one Dharma. Everybody has this body, potentially. We have to realize, if you are Buddhist, this Buddha that we have in us, in this Dharmakaya, in Tibetan Buddhism sometimes it's called Adi Buddha, the original Buddha. We can say also it is Vishnu, why not? Paramatma. They don't say like this, but we can say. So, in other words, what this original Buddha, I have Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj's picture in front of me. I'm speaking also to him. He can correct me. He said this Vishnu Buddha is the original Buddha. Yes, of course. But we don't have any books from him. He taught pure Dharma. He never said there's no soul. But this historical Buddha, he realized, he had this realization, and then he was teaching the Four Noble Truths. Everything is misery, sarva dukkha. Then trishna means the thirst to live, the desire to enjoy. This is what brings misery. And the solution of all this misery is nirvana, meaning the state of nothingness, basically. And how to attain nirvana? By the Eightfold Noble Path, right conduct, right speech, right work, and so on. So this is what he taught. And I said this can be boiled down to Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya is a very old school, one of the oldest school of thought in India. Sankhya means to count. Krishna is saying in Uddhava Gita, he's speaking to Uddhava, he's saying there are many, many different schools of Sankhya. It all depends on how many tattva or principle you're counting. Traditionally there's 26 tattva, but some say 16, some say 10, some say 4 if you only count the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, air, then there's 4. If you add an ether, that's 5, and so on. So Sankhya is a very old philosophy, and it is prior to Buddhism, the historical Buddhism. Now we also said there's 2 Kapila. It's 2 Buddhas. There's more than 2 Buddhas. There's many Buddhas, but there's original Buddha and historical Buddha. And then there's 2 Kapila. Atheistic Kapila who taught that there's no God. And then the theistic Kapila who speaks in the Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Yoga. Now we also heard there's 2 Shukadev Goswami. One that is the renounce that is speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. Another one who is a householder, who is impersonal. He has realized Brahman. This, can go on like this endlessly. But we come back to our subject. The story of Siddhartha Gautama. He was born 6th century BC in Kapilavastu in Nepal at the foot of the Himalaya. And when he was born, a sage came to the royal palace, because he was the son of a king, saying, your son will leave the world and become an ascetic. And then the king became afraid. He said, okay, we're going to manage that my son will never see the suffering of the world. So he got married at the age of 16, and he was locked up in his palace and the courtyard. He has, of course, big land, but he couldn't go outside into the world. So he never got to see any kind of miseries outside of his outside of the palace. And the story goes that one day he wanted to go out, and just like when Krishna wants to go out of Kamsa's jail, everybody falls asleep. So similarly, on that day that he wanted to go out with his friend, who was actually his chariot driver, everybody fell asleep. And then the door opened, just like in Krishna's story, and he happened to go outside. And then the story goes on that he met someone who was very, very old, and he never seen old age. Very old, all bent up and everything, no teeth, no hair, nothing. And he was horrified. He said to his friend, what is happening to this man? So, the friend told him, oh, sir, this is one of the misery of life, old age. And he said, even a king can become old? He said, yes, even a king can become old. Then he met someone who was very, very sick. He was lying down on the floor like this, like we see sometime in India. We see so many diseased people. And he said, what happening to this poor person? And he said, this is another element of life. This is disease. And this also can happen to a prince. And then he saw someone who was just died. He was being caring. And then they were singing Nam Ram Satya Hai, singing the name of Ram. This is the truth. And then, he was, what happened? This is the last predicament of life. There's death. And he saw a mendicant, he saw an ascetic. And he was wondering, he was attracted to this ascetic. And his friend explained to him that those ascetics, they renounce the world in order to find peace of mind. So he resolved, I was born into this world to rule a kingdom, but I will not be able to rule any kingdom unless I find a solution to all these problems. He didn't see birth, but that is included. Birth, old age, disease, death. How to find a solution to all of this. So then he decided to leave his kingdom, leave his wife, he had a newborn child, he left everything, cut his beautiful hair, he took the sword and cut his hair, and he practiced intense austerities, becoming very, very, very skinny. Sometimes we see Chinese Buddha, very fat, laughing. This is just an image, but there's also a few picture or a few statue of showing Buddha completely emaciated, no, only skins and bones, and he was almost dying. But then a boat, came in the river, and there was the master of music and his pupil was telling he had a string instrument. If you string it too much, it will break. And if you don't do it enough, then it will be too low, you cannot play. And he understood, Siddhartha, he understood this also for my body. If I put too much austerities, it will break, I will die. And if I indulge in sense gratification, I'll become fat and useless. So he decided, I'm going to follow a middle path. So then he started to drink. There was a little girl, she was carrying some milk, and he started drinking that milk. And as soon as he did, because he was very, very weak, he started feeling better. And his friends that were there was 5 friends with him, they all said, oh Siddhartha, you have rejected your vow. But he said, no, I have found what I wanted. Then he sat down under a tree, and very quickly he achieved the Bodhi, illumination. And he had 3 temptations, just like Jesus in the desert, he has 3 temptations. The first temptation was enjoyment. Mara was sending to him all his beautiful girls, but he wasn't moved at all, and all these girls vanished. Then he became very, very angry, Mara. And then he sent his army. In the sky there was a big, big, big army. He started shooting arrows at him. But Buddha was very calm. And all the arrows came to him, then they became flowers. Then the last temptation, Mara became his ego and appeared in front of him and saying, if you worship me, just like in the Bible, Satan is saying to Jesus, if you worship me, I will give you all the kingdoms. So he said, if you worship me, if you surrender to me and stop this nonsense of trying to be realized, I will give you everything you want. But he says, no, architect, you will not build again what you have created. And then everything disappeared and he had nirvana. So this is a story of the Buddha. Then after that he hesitated to teach what he had realized. But Brahmaji, and that's in the Buddhist scripture, Brahmaji told him that you should, put into motion the wheel of Dharma. Dharma for the Buddhist means the law of the Four Noble Truths. And he did. And then he started having a disciple, and he lived a long life, 80 years old. Then he passed away, and they say he achieved parinirvana, meaning the final nirvana. So the Four Noble Truths, this is the main thing of the Buddhist and the theory of non-soul, neratmya. Because he never answered that question. He never said there's a soul or there's no soul. He just remained silent. And sometimes he explained that actually everything is just a combination of those aggregate, just like in Sankhya. We are just a combination of physical and mental elements. And so the self is nothing more than a combination of chemicals, atoms and chemicals, along with mental faculties like sensation, perception, thinking, feeling, willing, samskara. That is all. So now we come to Vedanta-sutra. There are many, many different sutras refuting this philosophy, and one that comes up is Anu Mriteshcha. It's always very short, those this aphorism, we put one word, two words together, and that's this, Anu Smriteshcha. So Smriti means to remember. So the sutra means on account of memory. What does that mean? The sutra is stressing that a very pertinent point. The living being thinks, feels, behaves according to the memory resulting from his past experience. If someone says, I saw this from the past, I had that example. I read in Facebook, one devotee, he was telling his biography before he met Srila Prabhupada. He said he was born in Berkeley, and then in 66, 67 he was in Haight-Ashbury where all the hippies were. He met Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, and all this. And this person that is remembering, then he became a devotee in 1970, and this person who is remembering what he lived is the same as today. The body has changed, and sometimes the perception are not as strong. Sometimes also memory is a little mixed up, but the experience of I was there. Someone who wasn't born in the same time doesn't even know who Jefferson Airplane or Grateful Dead are. They don't even know what is LSD. Are you experiencing this Jimi Hendrix thing? They don't know, because this is an entire area that is not accessible to his memory. But the person who has actually had this memory is the same. And John Locke is a British philosopher. He wrote in an essay concerning human understanding. In chapter 37, he speaks of the concept of identity. He equates it with what he called sameness with itself. Same with itself. What does that mean? Matter and even living beings with bodies change. Like, for example, I had a house when I was a kid. The house may have changed. Actually, family house for me has been sold out. So when I go there, sometimes they let me inside. They said, I used to live in this house. And they show me, and everything, many things has been transformed. They built a new kitchen, they built new rooms in the attics, and many things have changed. But I recognize the house nevertheless. Similarly with beings, I may have had a dog that lived for 10 years, so now I saw him when he was born, and I saw him growing, and I played with him when I was a kid, and then he becomes old, but it's still the same dog. I recognize him. Same with the children. They grow up, and sometimes we even see them dying. But nevertheless, it's the sameness with itself. There's no change of the identity. This idea of memory is very important, because if you say, like Buddhists say, everything is changing all the time. I don't have a soul. I'm changing all the time. There's no personal I, personal self that I can call I. Then therefore, the person who lived the experience of being in San Francisco in the 60s, and the person now in 2020 being locked up for COVID-19, it's not the same. According to this philosophy, it's not the same. How can he remember? If you remember, it means there's something that stays the same. So you may say, as devotees, this is only the working of the mind. Yes, and that is precisely my point when I say that Buddhists mistake the mind for the soul. Because if there's no soul, there's no mind. Same as the body. If there's no soul that animates the body is dead. So if there's no soul, there's also no mind to remember or even have samskara, because samskara means past experience. I experienced those things. I was traumatized, and I have this locked up in my mind. So therefore, I, the soul, I'm responsible. Of course, I'm not the mind. Of course, I'm not this body. But all this impression, sensation comes because the soul, my identity is there. It is simple to understand, but they don't understand. They think that there's only a combination of mind and body, and no soul. So therefore, their philosophy is to be rejected. Then another sutra, Nasato Drishta Tvat. Nothing can arise from non-existent. This is reminder of Bhagavad Gita. Nasato Vidyato Bhavo, Nabhavo Vidyate Sataha. And also in Greek philosophy, Parmenides, he said that there's only being, because non-being has no existence, it doesn't exist. And Plato developed this, saying that is the phenomenal world and the real world. And this is what we call metaphysics or ontology. Metaphysics. The problem is, Buddha doesn't want to talk about metaphysics, so then we have a problem. There's no soul. Who's transmigrating? There's a big problem for Buddhism. We'll see next time about Mahayana Buddhism. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyacha kripasindhu bhaivacha patitaram pavanibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah.